you are actively mourning the loss of people who never even existed. You carry the heavy, invisible grief of 1,000 different lives you could have lived, perfect futures you designed in your head, all while standing entirely still on a platform that offers nothing but the cold comfort of an impending departure. This is the quiet agony of infinite potential. Every glass train in this station represents a path you could take, a career you could master, a person you could love. And yet, you remain shivering on the platform because to step onto one train means watching all the others pull away forever. We are terrified that by committing to a single reality, we are digging a grave for our unlived lives. So we convince ourselves that making no choice is the only way to keep every single possibility alive, a beautifully tragic illusion that forces us to ask a very dangerous question. Why does staying completely still feel like the ultimate safety, even as it hollows us out from the inside? We treat indecision as a fortress, a sanctuary where we can never make the wrong choice, never fail, and never experience the sting of a reality that falls short of our dreams. But this fortress is entirely made of glass. As we walk the length of the station, peering into the illuminated carriages of our alternate selves, we begin to measure our messy, unpolished reality against these flawless phantoms. These imaginary versions of you do not have to pay bills, they do not suffer heartbreak, and they never make mistakes. They exist in a vacuum of sheer perfection, which introduces a quiet, insidious threat to our actual existence. Are the perfect, imaginary versions of ourselves actually our most dangerous enemies? We craft these hypothetical identities as a form of escapism, a place to hide when the real world demands too much of our fragile energy. Yet the longer we stare at them, the more they transform from comforting daydreams into brutal judges. They look out from their pristine carriages and silently demand to know why you haven't achieved what they have, creating a standard you can never possibly meet. Every time you attempt to take a step toward a real, tangible goal, you are forced to compare your clumsy beginnings to their immaculate finish lines. The weight of this comparison is crushing, chaining your feet to the concrete of a station that is slowly beginning to change. You convince yourself you just need a little more time to decide, a little more clarity before you pick a destination. But as the minutes bleed into years on this platform, a subtle shift begins to occur in the architecture of your sanctuary. The illusion of safety shatters. If staying uncommitted was truly protecting you, why does the air on the platform feel increasingly difficult to breathe? We assumed that by not boarding, we were keeping the trains waiting for us. But the timetable of life does not pause for your hesitation, and the realization of this inevitable motion forces us to confront a secondary paradox. If we know that standing still is causing our options to expire and our environment to decay, why do we fiercely defend our right to remain in the waiting room? Because to step onto a train requires a sacrifice we are fundamentally terrified to make. We must willingly accept that our capacity is finite, which brings us face to face with the most painful truth of human existence. Why does making a definitively good choice still feel like a profound and devastating loss? When you finally decide to commit to a career, a partner, or a city, you are not just saying yes to one reality. You are actively looking at every other glass train in the station and saying a permanent goodbye. You are watching the doors close on the artist you could have been, the adventurer you almost became, the different timeline that was just out of reach. It is entirely natural to grieve these unlived lives because they were real to you in the realm of your potential. But the tragedy deepens when we allow this grief to convince us that choosing nothing is better than enduring the pain of choosing something. We hoard our potential like a miser hoards gold, refusing to spend it for fear of losing it. We want to remain everything to everyone, floating in a limitless void, which blinds us to the horrifying reality of what this station actually is. We thought this platform was a place of endless opportunity, a staging ground for a magnificent future. But the architecture of this place is built on a monumental lie. The terrifying truth is that refusing to choose a train is not preserving your options. It is actively destroying them. Not choosing is still a choice, and it is the most destructive choice of all, because it condemns you to live your entire life in the waiting room. Those perfect imaginary versions of yourself that you held in such high regard, you begin to realize they are entirely hollow. They are flawless because they have never been tested by the friction of reality, never suffered, and therefore never truly lived. Your enemies were never other people, but these pristine phantoms demanding a perfection that biological life simply cannot sustain. When you measure a breathing, bleeding human against an immortal ghost, the human will always lose. By recognizing that these unlived lives are merely illusions designed to keep you safe from failure, their power over you begins to break. You understand that real life is inherently flawed, messy, and singular, which drastically shifts your perspective on the remaining trains. The illusion of safety and indecision is finally exposed as a slow, creeping paralysis. You weren't protecting your future, you were allowing it to slowly bleed out on the cold floor of a fantasy. Every second you spent refusing to move was a second you sacrificed the only currency you actually possess. Time does not wait for you to feel ready. It simply continues to thin out the herd of your possibilities until you are forced into a corner. Choosing a path means accepting the profound beauty of limitation. To be limited is to be human, to take up physical space, to anchor yourself to a reality that can hurt you but can also actually hold you. The grief of leaving the other trains behind doesn't entirely vanish, and perhaps it never should. But you begin to see that this grief is simply the entry fee for the privilege of existing in the tangible world. You realize that making a choice feels like a loss only if you view potential as superior to reality. But potential cannot keep you warm. Potential cannot build a legacy. The act of choosing is not a burial of your unlived lives. It is the birth of your actual life. It is the moment you transition from a ghost haunting a railway station into a participant in the messy art of living. By committing to this single path, you are not failing the other versions of yourself. You are setting them free. You release the burden of carrying 1,000 futures so you can finally carry the weight of just one. The waiting room is finally behind you. The paralyzing fear of committing dissolves the exact moment you realize that any real path, no matter how flawed, is infinitely superior to a perfect fantasy that doesn't exist. The pain of missing out on everything is replaced by the profound relief of finally being somewhere. You have traded the infinite void of what could be for the heavy, beautiful truth of what is. Your unlived lives will always run parallel to yours in the realm of imagination. Silent passengers in the dark. But they are no longer your masters. They are just echoes of the capacity you used to choose this exact moment. You are no longer mourning the futures that never arrived, because you are entirely consumed by the fierce, demanding beauty of the present. The spine of your dilemma has been broken by the simple, radical act of moving forward. You have survived the tyranny of potential. You have chosen to be real, to be flawed, to be entirely and unapologetically committed to the only life that actually belongs to you. You accepted that burying the ghosts of who you could have been is the exact same action as planting the seeds of who you are. But arriving at your destination introduces an entirely new psychological trap. Because once you finally choose a path, endure the journey, and reach that magical horizon you traded your present to get to, you are forced to confront a deeply unsettling silence. Why does finally achieving a massive, years-long goal so often bring a quiet sense of grief instead of euphoria? If you want to know why the lie of someday is secretly ruining your life, you need to watch this video next.